Castle Party from De Vere Games offers a fresh take on the flip and write genre, bringing polyomino shapes into the mix. This might not sound that new to you. There's a few games that you could describe in a very similar way, but this game certainly brings one or two new things to the party. Let's take a look. Inside the box, along with the rules, are 4 player boards, double-sided for various degrees of difficulty. We'll take you through the starter set version in this rules instruction today, but on the reverse there will just be a few extra little things where certain monsters will want to congregate towards. This will make a lot more sense once you understand the full game. Also inside, along with this cool promo wolf character that we'll come to later, are a bunch of tiles with shapes that you will recognize from many other polyomino games. There are all the traditional things that you could expect to find when playing a game of this ilk. And then there are the main character cards. These are the characters who are coming to the Pumpkin King's party that you must assort within the castle to score maximum points. There is Frankenstein's bride, the witches, vampires, ghosts, and skeletons. You'll also notice that there are male and female cards for each character, and each character card has the king or queen version of it. This is the same symbol but with a simple dot here. All makes sense later. The final card here are the unicorns. These score extra points in different ways. Setup of the game is simple. Simply take the polyomino shaped cards and divide them into 4 equal piles. This is a way that you'll be able to trigger a variable end game situation for each game that you play. On top of each of the piles, add one of these grandfather clocks face down so that you don't know when it's coming. Shuffle the 3 piles that had the grandfather clocks added to it and pile them on top of each other, and then on top of that pile add the final pile without the grandfather clock. This will trigger a variable effect in each game that you play where the grandfather clock appears at different times in each game. When the grandfather clock appears at each point, you will score a certain part of the game. Shuffle the character cards as well and deal out 3 cards to each player at random. Then you're ready to begin the game. To play the game is very simple. Simply flip over the top shape and then each player's in turn will add a card from their hand to fill that shape. So this single shape is very simple. The first player will just choose which card they want to place and place that down. All players will now draw one of these shapes onto their castle board. Most shapes will be more complicated than that, and they will show the starting space at which the player who flips over the card must place their first card down. So in this case, this shape could go any way that you feel it would fit best onto your castle board, but then you thus must place a card down that would go where this X is. Later players then will in turn add a card of their choice to go next to it. In this case, it would have to go into this space. The third player will then add their card to go here. All players will now have to draw these 3 shapes into a grid of 3 by 1 onto their castle board. This would look something like this, although you could place these shapes anywhere you like onto your board. Once all players have done this, you'll then flip over the next card and continue. This will carry on until the first grandfather clock appears. At this point in the game, the first grandfather clock has appeared. All players will now have a choice of which scoring system they want to take. There's the fireworks, the Conga Party, or the toast to the Pumpkin King. If you're going to score your fireworks, you would score simply 1 point for every character who you've placed by one of the 9 window spots who's able to look out and see the fireworks. In this case, we would score 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. If we chose the Conga Party, you would choose the largest group of any single type of character who are all in a conga line. So in this case, I could choose this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shape there if that was my choice. Finally, if you're going to choose the Pumpkin King, you would add a Pumpkin King shape into the board, and then you would score 1 point for every different type of character that surrounds him. In this case, it would just be 1 point. Even though there are 4 characters around him, they're all the same type. You would only score 1 of these at this point. The other 2 would be done when the other grandfather clocks come. When the third and final grandfather clock appears, that's the end of the game. Throughout the game, at any point, players are able to use one of 3 special powers. The first one here is the lights out power. This gives the player the opportunity to rearrange the monsters that make up the group by switching their positions, but the shape and orientation of the figure must remain unchanged. No monsters can be added or removed, but this does change the effect for all players. The masked ball here character allows the player to draw one of the monsters from the group as though it were any different type of monster. This does not affect any other players. And the final one is changing the orientation. This will allow you to change the orientation of the cards that you've laid out, and this will affect all players, so must be done before players draw it. If at the end of the game any of these haven't been used, you will score 2 points for each unused character for a maximum of 6. You'll notice in the castle there are spaces that go outside of the room. At the end of the game, for any spaces that you've had to draw outside, you'll score -1 point for this. This does not include the drawbridge. This is a safe space for the characters. They won't score any positive points, but they also won't score any negative points. In this example, you would then simply score all of your groups of characters. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the squares, all in a group. This one outside doesn't count. So for the squares, I would score 7 points. You'll notice that for the kings and the queens, you've added a dot here. This gives you an extra point for any shape of the same type that surrounds it. So for the circles here, I'll score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then an extra 6, 7 for these two that touch that. So for the circles, I would score 7. The unicorns score a little bit differently. You'll get -1 for any unicorn that's on its own. For any unicorn in a group of 2, you will score 1 point. In a group of 3, 5, a group of 4, 10, and a group of 5, 15. You will only score your largest group of unicorns together. So in this case, I would score 1 point for the unicorns. You'll add up all of your points and then score your total. An interesting rule of this game is the way that it's played in a real geographical sense. What I mean by that is that you place the shapes into your castle the way they're facing you. So this player has drawn it vertically in the way that they can see the shape to them. However, this player has drawn it horizontally. This adds an interesting twist to the game, meaning that every player is always drawing exactly the same shapes, but not always in the exact same orientation. This geographical orientation rule and the fact that you're not just drawing the polyomino shapes in a block, you're adding in shapes within the shapes, give this game a little fresh twist and make it a lot more fun than what you might have originally expected. Castle Party is a lot of fun and one I would recommend to anybody who enjoys the flip and right style game, especially when it incorporates polyominoes. It adds a few twists that I haven't seen before, mean this is one that's certainly staying in my collection.